want to do the intro? I'm too tired to think of something. That could be our intro. John's too tired to think of a witty intro. No, do a real intro.
Does that mean all the other intros were witty? Oh,
okay. Now this is our intro. We can start with me being insulted. That's an acceptable introduction. I'm John Shidley Hill,
and I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. As people just heard, I'm a very tired human being. But you know what, Sheldon? All the greats played hurt. And that includes your favorite podcasters. So I'm digging deep for the good listeners, the good people.
Do you know what's funny? You're tired because you've been working hard because it's the Olympics. I'm actually off work, but I'm tired because I've just been rewatching The Newsroom for absolutely no reason at all. And was up till 5 a.m. watching episodes of The Newsroom. So I probably shouldn't have told you that because that makes you feel even worse.
I have no sympathy for you whatsoever.
Could I just?
Oh my God, Sheldon!
Could I double down on that and tell you an article that I was just reading? I'm like, this is the free time that I've had for the past 2 weeks. Where is it? Did I just lose it? Oh no, there's an article right here, and I've been debating. I'm like, no, I cannot click on this. This is from Time magazine, by the way. It says, Grey's Anatomy may be giving you the wrong ideas about medicine, study says. What? I'm
Sheldon,
like, sorry, Internet, you will not win that round. I am not clicking on that article.
You are killing me, Smalls, with the life you are leading. Reading up on Grey's Anatomy facts and rewatching The Newsroom. Yeah. This is a real peek behind the curtain for our listeners as to the kind of man you are. Well, as Brad would say, you just compromised your character.
Hey, this is what I do with the little time off, right? Back to work on Monday, but until then, more Newsroom, more challenge, less reading about Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, maybe tone down the Grey's Anatomy, turn up the challenge. What did you think? I gotta throw this out there. In terms of the competitions themselves, I speak English as my native language. Mm-hmm. I think this is the best challenge season ever, just based off of the competitions. Because, it was what, 3 episodes ago that we had Sylvia versus Mel.
Yeah.
And now we are getting, we had to go through a couple people, but we're getting Derek versus Joss. These are some serious competitions. They're entertaining, they're dramatic, they're well fought, they're even. Seriously, what season's better?
I got a lot of takes on this whole Joss versus Derek matchup. I thought it was good. I got a lot of takes on that, but I want to ask you something first. We've had back-to-back weeks of just crazy interviews, which did really well, which were kind of, they gained a little buzz online, let's say. And I wanted to know, do you want to kind of go through some of the feedback of that stuff first, or do you want to save that for the end of the podcast? Doesn't really matter either way.
Let's get to the feedback.
Let's get to the feedback. Okay, so for those listeners of You Killed It, you already know this, but if you're new to the show, just a heads up, last week's episode of You Killed It, we had the pleasure of spending our Valentine's Day, getting our Valentine's Day started by interviewing Marie and Sylvia. And I thought it was a great interview. It was fun. It was entertaining. I was entertained. I felt like I could have listened to them talk and throw shade forever. But it's always funny, too, because, again, we post this all over the place. The podcast ends up on Facebook groups and Reddit groups and stuff. So it's always fun to, go through because I like, and I know you do too, John, to see what people have to say, right? Because, again, we're just dudes doing this for fun. And now that we get to, talk to people from the actual show, it's always interesting to hear how people are receiving our conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that was kind of funny, which I thought was an interesting take, because I'd never thought of it before. And trust me, I'm reading this not as a knock. I'm reading this because it honestly made me think about something that I never, in a way that I never really thought about it before. So someone named Camilla Fan, which we can get to the name of this person's Reddit name after, but it says, these guys give good interviews, but they're clearly biased, which is fine. It's their podcast. I just don't think they will get a lot of traffic because of it. Personally, I enjoy Challenge Mania a lot more, even though Derek doesn't have the skills for interviewing. Scott does. Challenge Mania isn't as biased, therefore they can reach a broader audience. So, again, I was reading this and I was thinking, oh, I never really like, for a split second, my initial thought, John, honestly was, oh, okay, we have a bias. But then I was like, wait a second. We're just talking about a podcast of television show, right? Like, we're doing a podcast on a television show, talking to people that we like. Like, how would you do that without a bias? Like, this isn't journalism. Like, we're not trying to, like, break down, like, the real insights and serious issues going on inside the Challenge House, right? Like, we're talking to people that we enjoy on TV and busting jokes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I get what the person's trying to say, but it was kind of funny to me, no?
Yeah, I also saw that comment.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because although we're journalists professionally,
Yeah.
this is just a podcast for fun. We definitely have our opinions. I don't think we're that biased.
No, I was going to say, I guess we're open about saying, like, okay, well, we like Marie or we like Wes or we like whoever, right? But, like, I feel like that's a normal reaction of anyone watching the show. Do you know what I mean? And that's all we're doing. We're just talking about the show that we enjoy, and talking about the people that we enjoy watching on the show, right? So it's not really so much about, being biased or unbiased. Like, it's just, I would want to talk to Marie, so we talk to Marie. I wouldn't really want to talk to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of someone. Nelson? I don't know. Like, nothing against Nelson, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just a kind of, like, to me, it's way more simplistic than, we're out here trying to push a narrative or whatever. Because I think when we get to certain things, especially in this episode, I don't know. I don't really look at it as a bias per se, because clearly we're rooting for people. But to me, that's just human nature.
See, I would happily interview literally anyone on this show, except the one person who at this point I'm not comfortable with interviewing would be Camilla, who obviously isn't on the show. But otherwise, like, if literally anyone on this season of the challenge or who's like been on the past 2 or 3 seasons of the challenge, like, tweeted at me, I'd be like, yeah, for sure. Like, let's see what we can do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like I'm sure, like, if you wanted to interview anyone, it's not like I'd be like, no, I don't want to talk to that person. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But I will say there'd be people that I'm interested in talking to and others that I would be like, yeah, okay, I guess. Like, why not? Let's see how it goes. Do you know what I mean? I think it's kind of just interesting how it came about. The people that we've interviewed so far have all been people that we enjoy. So I guess maybe that's kind of like the fluke aspect of it all, so to speak. But yeah, I guess my main reason for bringing this up was just because I never thought about it in the sense of, oh, we have a bias. I thought it was, like, obvious in terms of, like, well, no, seriously. I thought it was obvious in terms of, like, we're talking about who's the MVP or who we want to win or who we think is good, who we think, you'd want to sit down and have a beer with. So clearly talking to that person, do you know what I mean? It's going to be a good, positive, like, jokes type of discussion, right? Like, it's not going to be like a hard hitting, like, now, Marie, why do you really think you're upset at Cara Maria? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Let's dig deep into your past and see why. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to be that conversation. Like, I'm here for the jokes, right?
Yeah, I also think that, to get into the nitty gritty of how you killed it, how we do it, a big part of the, like, how we get interviews is also the people who like us.
Yeah, I think that plays a role, and I'm sure if like some of these people hear us talk positively about them, that I'm sure that doesn't hurt. Like I understand that part of the game. Like on some level, for some people, there might be a transaction involved in terms of, oh, well, these guys say nice things about me. I'll go on and talk to them, right? Like I totally understand that could be part of the transaction, but on my end, anyways, right? Like I'll speak for myself here because I don't want to speak for you, but you know, to me, like that's still like I'm okay with that transaction because for me, I'm like, again, this is someone that I would want to talk to. We haven't gotten to the point yet where it's like, someone comes on and I'm kind of like, nah, I don't really know if I want to talk to this person. Like we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I don't know, just kind of rolling with it. But anyways,
Yeah.
like there was a lot of other comments that came on where people were bringing up other questions, and of course, feel free to hit us up whether it's on Twitter or in the comment section of Reddit or on Facebook. But yeah, people were saying, here's another comment here asking, what the hell did Kara do to Marie? Did Marie like run over her dog or some shit? She is so vile towards her. Let's see. Another comment from Yukin Choki. Okay. This is BS. Marie started it all by talking shit about Kara in the Redemption House. Then after filming, Kara liked to tweet from one of her fans that Marie should stop getting casted. Then Marie since has made up a bunch of lies saying Kara's picking on her and saying mean/horrible things about her, which is a lie. It's just funny. There's so many things. And again, people have these you're coming from a corner already where you either like Kara or you dislike Kara. You like Marie or you hate Marie. Someone else named Lily R1, or maybe I'm messing that up, but anyways, says the blowjobs talks was so unnecessary, and if Kara is on next season with Kyle, I hope she won't hook up with him again. Okay. Sure. Interesting. Let's see. Another Maria is obsessed with Kara. Kara Maria is obviously a very popular character. Even Marie would acknowledge that, right? Like she is probably the most popular female competitor on the show, at least recently, just because she's consistently on most of the seasons. She's probably the longest serving vet that's consistently there.
Yeah, amongst the women, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that like Cara Maria for sure. So it's funny to like go through and kind of see people going at her, and also there's some compliments here. There's one from Instant 2 Legend that says, because we actually did a video of this as well. If you happen to stumble across it either on YouTube or on the On Blast podcast website, you'll be able to find a link to video that we taped of this podcast last week. And the one person commented, the guy on the left looks like Justin Verlander.
And I just wanted to congratulate you, Sheldon, on being married to Kate Upton.
For the record, I am Sheldon the black guy, and I definitely do not look like Justin Verlander. And also, definitely am not married to Kate Upton, but one could only dream. But John, does this mean you had a chance? Is that a thing here?
You know what? I once almost met Kate Upton before they tied the knot.
Oh.
I had my shot, but I missed it. I was at Detroit Tigers training camp a few years ago, and I saw Verlander, and Kate Upton had been at training camp like with her family like the day before. So like I missed my shot. I was just like thrown a Tigers cap on and been like, "Hey, how's it going? I look terrible today, but I am Justin Verlander."
I did see real life Kate Upton as well at the NBA All-Star game when it was in Toronto. And, did have to like take a second to be like, yes, that is Kate Upton. Pause. Take it in.
Pause.
Okay.
Breath.
Cool. Yeah. Deep breath. Soak it all in. Soak in the same oxygen. Yes.
There was another comment on Reddit where someone was defending us. Maybe it was defending us with the claims of our blatant biases, and the person defending us said like, "Hey, oh no, someone had done like a blow-by-blow recap of what last week's podcast was like."
Yeah.
And someone was like, "Hey, like, for what it's worth, if you don't click on their podcast, like they don't get paid. like they need those clicks to keep going. And maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but guys, we don't get paid. Like, we are that big losers. I actually commented on the person. I'm like, thanks so much for the kind words, but if anything, we're losing money based off of time we spent, and I've had to pay for like a SoundCloud membership to make this happen. So we're running at a loss. I'm not complaining, and please keep listening, but I also understand that not everyone has 2 hours per week to listen to an interview with Sylvia and Marie, or listen to you and I just talk about the challenge for like an hour. Like, I get it. I don't get mad at people who like recap what we say and do.
Yeah.
If anything, I think it's kind of cool. Like, I was telling our mutual friend Danny Black last night.
Yes, Danny Black.
Yes, Danny Black. DB? I was telling him that it's, like, cool and surreal to have, like, people we don't know talking about our podcast. Like, a lot of the comments you've been quoting are from what you posted on Reddit. Like, you posted a link to the podcast and then people commented. But
Yep.
before you did that, someone else had posted a link to our podcast and had, like, started a conversation. Like, someone we don't know. And to me, that's just, like, the coolest thing in the world. You'd think I'd be used to it as, like, you work on a television show that rates, like, hundreds of thousands of viewers per day. And, I mean, I work for the largest news outlet in Canada, but it's still surreal to be like, oh, people want to listen to me talk about the challenge? Le challenge? Sure.
Exactly,
why not?
right?
Sounds
good.
It
is
good.
super fun, and it is super interesting when you break it down like that, and I think it still stems from the fact that, like, we're just recording a conversation that we'd be having normally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it sort of, like, snowballed into, hey, do you actually want to, like, ask Marie about what happened with the note? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's super weird, but still fun. And, you know, for that reason, too, it's cool because you always want to be able to engage and have other people's opinions of what's going on. And, you know, and I feel like that's kind of the cool part. So that's why I always try to, whenever I remember to, honestly, read people's opinions on what we said, what they thought about the podcast, what they were getting from, you know, listening to Marie and Sylvia as well. And even if you think you are calling us out, that's totally cool too. Like, I'm totally here for that conversation because I think that that's what it's for, right? Like, we want to increase a group of people that are talking about this and bring you in on the conversation. So yeah, all good, you know. And you talked about people having time to sit around and listen to us talk about the episode of the challenge. Maybe we'll get to a little bit more of that right now.
Yeah, let's do that. And let's start, as I was saying, with the fact that I think by, like, pure competition level, this is the best season of the challenge.
See, I feel like we say that all the time. I feel like it's always a recency bias because, like, whatever's in front of us is,
recency
like,
bias. Listen to you. That's some fancy talk, Sheldon.
I just think it's like, yeah, whatever's in front of us, whatever just happened is the best thing ever. And that's kind of what ends up, you know, because reality is, especially for me too, like, I have a bad memory. So there could be something from, like, Rivals 2 or something that I'm not remembering at all. You know what I mean? And so, like, it kind of gets swept under the rug. But, you know, to me, though, I am enjoying the season. I do think that some of the challenges have been really good, but I will also say that, you know, there's definitely a recency bias, and I got a lot of takes about what happened. Not a lot of takes, I shouldn't say that, but I will say I have some different takes than I think most people had about what happened with Derek and Josh. But before we get to that, what just happened? My notes just, like, this is funny, John, because this is, like, what you always say about our longtime listeners will know the endless debate that John and I have about I type out notes and John writes out notes. And as I was just scrolling, my computer just, like, stalled and, like, the notes were gone. I was like, oh no, this is gonna prove John right once and for all. But no, the notes are back.
Nah, I thought I
No
had
triple.
you. Clearly, I have to load your computer with more viruses.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'll work on it.
So yeah, so first off, okay, so we saw what happened last week already, right? Shane's done, and who was the other person? Shane and why am I drawing a huge blank right
It
now?
started
Oh, it
with
started with
Veronica
Veronica
and Issa.
and Anissa. Yeah, so that's what it was.
I
So
I have feelings about Veronica versus Anissa. I have
yes,
takes.
okay, so let's start there, right? So Veronica versus Anissa, they still have bad blood, right? And it's like, okay, well, they had an issue stemming from last season of rivals. Uh, no, not rivals. Why is rivals in my head? Dirty 30, right? So they had issues stemming from Dirty 30, obviously, which stem back to even more previous episodes or different seasons of the challenge. And I wasn't really buying into this. Like, I didn't even really care about the whole Veronica and Anissa beef, for lack of a better term, as I do air quotes as if people can actually see me. Um, I don't know. I didn't really care. And then when it started, and Anissa, I think still has feelings for Veronica, and Veronica is kind of like, I don't really care about Anissa, so they're kind of angry here, and Veronica ends up breaking a finger, right?
Yeah.
She can't continue, obviously, because you have to grab the 8. And the thing that stuck out to me the most about this was two questions for you. First, I'll ask you, do you think Anissa should feel bad?
No, because it wasn't on purpose. I had to think about it though, but it wasn't on purpose. Like it was just like in the course of normal play. Like I don't think she like it didn't look like at least that she grabbed Veronica's finger or anything like that. I think it was just like she yanked at the 8 and it bent back Veronica's finger.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What did you think? Do you think she should feel bad?
No, definitely not. She should not feel bad because they're in a competition, and and they're not friends, right? Like they're clearly in this moment of where they're not talking, and so you shouldn't take it easy. And if we remember back to last episode, I guess the ending of last episode, it kind of started with there's a comment from, I was going to say Vanessa, and that would just be combining both of their names. But Veronica says that she was kind of up. She kind of thought maybe Anissa would take it a little easy on her. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and Anissa said Veronica probably thinks I'm going to take it easy on her, but I'm not.
Exactly, right? And so
I
for
love
that reason
Anissa.
alone, right? Yeah, I mean, why would she take it easy on her? Like that's so lame. And plus, if you're Anissa, and I don't know I'm going to put my producer hat on, right? And I don't know what the pay scale is for these. What are they calling them? The mercenaries.
The mercenaries, yeah.
Did I just make that up? No, that's not.
No, that's what they've been calling them.
Oh, okay. So they come back, and I don't know what the pay scale is for them, but I feel like, okay, you're getting paid to come back, and this is like a gimmick that they're doing. Maybe they'll do it again in another season. Like, if you're Anissa, do you want to just give up and like give an easy victory to someone and then possibly ruin your chance of making money somewhere else down the line? Because they're going to be like, well, we could bring back Anissa, but she just let Veronica win the last time, so let's not bring her back this time. You know what I mean? Like there'd be nothing positive coming out of someone just letting the other person win. Like that just seems like so lame and makes you look like a chump, because you're also coming back to look like a badass, right? Like that's supposed to be the point. Like you're supposed to be some big bad challenge vet, which we'll get to a little later, right? And like to just give that up. So I was already rooting for Anissa to begin with, and then the saltiness of Veronica when she lost, and she's like, "Oh well, I'm not going to give Anissa credit for that win. Like I just got hurt." So I didn't like how Veronica handled that, and I'm gonna ask you, like, is she just hating on Anissa? Like, should she give her credit for the win? Like, she won.
When I saw that Veronica's finger was broken, I thought to myself, what would I still compete with a broken finger? And like listeners might say to themselves, well, I mean, she's got a broken finger, and you know, TJ came over and said, you have a broken finger, you can't hold on to the 8, therefore you can't play. But we just saw Jordan, who only has one hand, win.
Hmm.
So, like, once it's braced up and it was her pinky, like,
Yep.
in my shoes, if I was in Veronica's shoes, I think I'd still compete, right? Like, might as well. But the way TJ phrased it to her, I think it was kind of editing, but like I think he was telling her that the producers had decided she wasn't allowed to compete, or the medical staff. So
Yeah,
I
that
think
could
she was
definitely be a
salty. I think she was salty, not so much at Anissa, but salty that she wasn't allowed to compete anymore.
That's
Like, that's
interesting.
my interpretation.
I didn't read it that way at all, but that's super interesting, and it actually does make sense, and I could see it being like that for sure. That does actually make sense. I never thought of that. Um, yeah, I definitely took it as she was hating on Anissa, just kind of like after she realized like it's more sour grapes, right? Because again, she's coming in thinking, "Oh, I wish Anissa would take it easy on me so I could just continue on in the game because we were cool, and maybe I would take it easy on her if that was the case, and I was the one coming back, So maybe she was just a little salty about that. But you bring up a very good point, John. I like that. Making me think here. Making me think.
That's what I'm here for. And also, I think that the bad blood between them is real. Like, I think they have a lot of complicated emotions between them.
Yeah.
They used to have mad love, but now look at what they've done. Because, baby, now they've got bad blood.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
But I'm
It took a
serious. I
second
do
to click,
think.
but
Thank you. I do think that they have, like, legitimately complicated feelings for each other.
yeah, it still looks like they need to have a serious sit down, like a full on sit down and discuss some issues. But
Yeah, hash it out. Perhaps without TJ on the air horn.
maybe on a future season of Rivals or something. But
Yeah.
we'll see. Do you
Or
do you think
exes.
most people listening like know the backstory in terms of like what we're talking about and what happened?
You know what? We
the
should treat
history-
every episode like it's someone's first episode.
That's fair. That's fair. So for those who don't know, Anissa and Veronica are both like this is what if Johnny Bananas has been on like 16 seasons, they've probably been on 10 or something. Like they're up there, right? Like they've been on a lot of seasons of the challenge. But as we go back in time, way back, Anissa, what was the girl's name? Sorry, what was the girl's name that Anissa was seeing?
Rachel.
Rachel, yes. So basically, there was a huge love triangle between Rachel, Veronica, and Anissa dating way back. And essentially, Veronica ended up dating Rachel after Anissa. Anissa didn't really know. And then nobody really knew about this for years and years and years until Anissa let it out on last season of Dirty 30. So imagine your real life getting played out. Nobody really knows about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, everybody knows that you had this relationship with another woman in the middle of you taping a reality show. So that kind of made them butt heads on the last season they were both on. They had a drunken kind of flirtatious night, which led for a very funny scene as Marie, was it Marie that was like in the bed?
Yeah,
this all
Marie was
happened?
in the room.
Yes. And basically it looked like some stuff went down, but they both tried to then deny after that it didn't happen. And it led to more awkward, uncomfortable conversations at the reunion show where Veronica basically was saying that she didn't really want any of that to come out on television. And she kind of felt betrayed by Anissa because she felt like Anissa was kind of trying to play up a storyline for in front of the camera and kind of blindside her. So a lot of history there and a lot of stuff where, the lines get blurred between real life and then TV life. And it becomes more relevant when you pay attention to, like, Veronica is kind of in the background a lot, right? Like, that's kind of her game. So you could tell that she is trying to keep a layer keep a layer of her life separate. So when that was put into the forefront during Dirty 30, that's why they ended up having this beef. They haven't really talked since the reunion show, so the beef is still kind of there. Yeah, interesting. An interesting thing that I'm sure you could go online and watch that episode of the reunion special of Dirty 30, as long as you have time to figure out which episode of the reunion, because it lasted like 8 episodes, right?
Yeah, it was way too long.
But yeah, a lot of stuff going on there.
I also want to add, it was complicated because, I mean, it was already a complex situation, but Veronica, I gather, had wanted to keep her sexual orientation quiet, which is fair.
Like, she just didn't want it to be a storyline. I don't even think it was, I think, like, you know, just to clarify, you know, because I know you're not saying this, but I think it was more so she didn't want it to be a storyline, right? Like, whatever she's into is what she's into, but she never really discussed it on television. And for Anisha to basically put it out there, right, in that context, kind of threw her off.
Yeah, she was out, I gather she was out in her personal life, but hadn't really, like, come out publicly. And she also made the point that it wasn't fair to Rachel because they'd never really had a discussion about making their relationship public, and then Anissa made it public, and it was like...
Exactly.
Rachel didn't have a chance to have her say in what's happening. And, like, Rachel's just had a kid with her wife, but maybe they have 2 kids. In any event, I understand some of Veronica's beef.
Yeah, very complicated issue. It's
complex.
Adding to the beef, leading up to maybe the possible saltiness as to why Veronica was so salty after this win. Or, sorry, after her loss. So she's done, joining Shane, who's also done. Moving on to our next battle between Tori and Killa Kam. I got a lot to say here about Tori. And if you follow us, you know, last season of Dirty 30 was Tori's first season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Tori's first season of the challenge, was Dirty 30. So I kind of found it weird that, I mean, that Tori comes back. And, hey, she had a great rookie season. She did a great job. Great showing. Great competitor. I was on Team Tori. She did a great job, right? Like, and I'm not even talking about the Derek stuff because who cares? I'm talking strictly as a competitor and just a good, like, opening season on the challenge. She did a great job. But I don't know if she has the resume or even, like, the resume to justify her coming back as one of these mercenaries, right? And it kind of threw me off because she was very... I don't want to say cocky because that is kind of like just her normal bravado or attitude that she has, you know, like she's a very, like, it's not confidence. I'm struggling to find the word to describe it, but she seemed very, there's a lot of sauce, right? And maybe, you know, as the kids say now, a little too much sauce, you know, she had coming into this.
She talks a big game.
Yeah. And I was just kind of like, there are 2 angles here, right? And one was, okay, well, she didn't strike me as being like a resounding favorite over Kam. Like, if you asked me who I thought was going to win before, like, it was like a toss-up, right? I could see either of them winning. But she seemed really loose, whereas if you watch how the other mercenaries went into it, they were very serious, almost trying to play like an intimidation game, whereas Tori just kind of seemed like she was coming in and this is going to be light work for her, you know? And, like, Kam isn't really the person to like, she's not going to be intimidated at all, right? So I felt like that was kind of interesting coming, like, to start. But even the way that it started, Tori comes out gunning in round 1. She wins round 1, and you could see that Kam kind of needed to, like, get settled in. It's almost like, to use a boxing analogy, she needed to get hit first, right? Yeah. And then she was like, all right, let's go, you know? And they had the scene where Leroy's just yelling, he body her, you know? Like, it was cool, and I enjoyed that a lot. But who did you think was going to win between Killa Kam and Tori heading in? And did you read it the same way I did? Like, did Tori kind of look a little too confident?
You and I are in total agreement. I like Tori a lot. I thought it was a stretch when she was brought on to Champs versus Stars.
Huge
and,
stretch, yeah.
And I thought it was a stretch to bring her in as a mercenary here. Again, I like her. I think she makes for good TV. I think she's a good competitor. Mm-hmm. But she hasn't, like, proven herself as an absolute killer. Like, if you look at the others, like, I don't know how many competitions Anissa's been in, like, in terms of, like, elimination competitions, but it's got to be in the double digits for sure.
Yeah.
And Jordan and Derek would be in the same ballpark, and we know that Laurel and Frank and CT are coming, and they all, like, Laurel's like 11-1 in competitions, and her only loss is to Cara Maria, who's also got like a sterling record. So, you know, Tori and her like 4 eliminations, 5 eliminations, whatever, like she's in that ballpark. It's less impressive, and also the people that she beat are not people that you're like, oh yeah, like they wreck shit. Like it's not like they were epic clashes.
Totally.
Like she beat Brittany, I want to say. I don't know. Whoever she beat, it wasn't exactly a murderer's row. So,
totally true.
You know, that said, I did think that they were pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, I think it was super easily matched, and I also think that after Kam, to use a boxing analogy again, took the first punch, she kind of like the adrenaline started running, the juices started flowing, and I think like Tori didn't have that next level to take it.
She didn't have the right mindset. She was, to your point, she was taking it more lightly.
Yeah, and I think same thing too, right? Like different people react differently. Like Kam got punched first, and she was like, "Oh, okay." And then when she kind of returned the shot, Tori kind of cowered, you know? And there's even that weird moment where I'd wonder what actually happened, because it seemed weird that a producer came on to, like, kind of get in between them, because it didn't look that serious. Like, I know that Kam kind of got up and, like, pushed Tori as she got up, but it didn't look that serious or that threatening at all. And especially as I was sent a long email text message from our mutual friend Lawrence Thomas, You Killed It superfan, this morning. He sent it saying, "I found it interesting that the producer jumped in so quickly to like break it up. Meanwhile, we didn't see any shots of the producer during Mel and Sylvia, when Mel was throwing like serious kicks, and you know, which is an interesting point. And maybe coming off of the Mel and Sylvia battle, they were like, okay, before anything gets out of hand, you know, before it gets to that point, let's try to break it up, right? Like maybe that could be a thing. But I just think by that point, Killa Kam's mental was there, and she was just like mentally and physically, she just came out and got Tori. And then like I didn't really, to further your point where you said you don't think Tori was like as into it, like when she lost, she didn't really take the loss that bad at all, right? She's just kind of like, oh, it's great to see other great strong females in the house. Like, you're not even in the house, you traveled all this way and then took an L. Like, what? I don't know, maybe I'm just reading it wrong, maybe it caught me off guard, I don't know. But shouts to Killa Kam, because that was a big time performance.
I'm looking this up because I like to back up what we say. I like to make sure that our memory is not wrong. And Tori won 1 elimination in Dirty 30 and then earned her way back into the house after she was eliminated in a group. So and then she was 3rd in the final challenge.
But she did during that season though, like she won a couple challenges, or like no,
she won a couple challenges, but she only won 1 elimination.
Yeah, I got
in the Presidio, she beat Marie and eliminated Marie.
Okay.
And no offense to Marie, sorry Marie, I know you're listening, but when it comes to like physical competitions, she's not up there.
I feel
sorry,
like
Marie.
Marie would tell you that herself, right? Yeah, we're not like breaking any news, right? But totally, no. I see what you're saying, and it was an interesting thing, and I just think that the Killer Cam matchup wasn't a good one for Tori at all. Like,
No.
once she, we talk about it all the time, right? Because this was a contact challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And in those contact challenges, some people engage with the contact and others cower. And I'm not saying that Tori did, but I just think that she didn't have the level of kickback that Killer Cam did. But speaking of that,
yes.
the main event of this episode...
Speaking of compete levels, as we say in Canada.
Yeah. The Joss versus Derek. I know this is what people have probably been waiting for. They're probably like, why is it taking you guys so long to talk about this? But I'm going to let you go first, actually. What was your take on this whole thing, this thrilling, 11-round belt between Joss versus Derek? I'll start with, who did you think was going to win at first? And then what did you think of the actual battle?
I thought Derek was going to win, and I thought Derek was going to win based purely off of Joss's attitude. Because he definitely came in underestimating Diesel Derek, who's one of the toughest competitors in challenge history. And, you can never, under any circumstances, take your opponent lightly. And he should have, Joss, at the very least, should have read the room and been like, people like Johnny Bananas and Leroy and, other and Cara Maria and other, hardcore, longtime veterans are like, oh, shit, Derek, you're in for a rough ride. You should, tweak to that and be like, I wonder why people are so worked up about seeing, this, I think, I could be wrong, I think Derek's shorter than Anissa and Tori. I think he's
you're right.
The shortest guy, the shortest one of the four mercenaries, but he's, beefy, he's pretty jacked.
Yeah.
So, and, Derek, of the four mercenaries, probably was taking it the most seriously. He wasn't speaking, he was doing that, angry pace that people do, pacing back and forth, getting psyched up. I'd be a little worried if I saw that. But, Joss is used to being, the most athletic sort of guy. But it's also a classic example of, you see this in sports. Sometimes the people with, the craziest bodies that can do the most impressive athletic things, when it comes to contact, as you always say, they don't love contact. They're all show, no go. Mm-hmm. They're a Ferrari in a demolition derby. Sure, they're the strongest and fastest, but they also don't want to take any dents. So I did not like Joss's chances. I was impressed with how he hung in. And, Derek also, like Reggie Miller, had the presence of mind to know that he wasn't out of the ring, that only Joss was out of the ring. So, that's a wily veteran play right there. That's what it came down to, right? Was mental fatigue on Joss's part, and after an hour of basically wrestling with this little bulldog, you would be tired mentally. It cost him.
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting just because you're right, Joss did surprise me here, because I think right off the bat, actually, on the first round, as soon as it went, I think Derek grabbed the 8 first, and Joss kind of ran and just straight out tackled him. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, I wasn't really expecting that at all, right?
I really liked that move. I liked that Joss came out like that. But go on.
Yeah, it kind of showed that he was like, all right, I'm here for business, right? And I think it showed Derek oh, okay. And then that kind of amped it up a little more. The thing that I was wondering more about was the strategy that both guys had, right? Because it kind of seemed to me, this is what I thought, and I don't know if you read this the same way too, but to me, I kind of read it as, for the most part, Joss was ragdolling Derek, right? He was just trying to out muscle him and do it that way instead of strategically, whether it's through hand placement or body placement of the 8 and how you're gonna rip it away. He just tried to ragdoll Derek, and then in Derek's mind, he's just committed to holding on for dear life at that point. right? He's not really trying to wrestle it away from Joss. And so Joss is the one that's exerting a lot more energy, trying to rip it away from Derek. And I think that was kind of Joss's flaw. Like, he was just like, oh, this guy's way smaller than me. I'm definitely stronger than him. I'm just going to rip it apart. But I'm going to use Wes as an example here. And I know that, and I don't know why, or I don't really know like the reason behind there's, I guess, a Wes and Derek beef going on. Mm-hmm. Do you know anything about this? I don't really know why it's going on or what's going on. I've just seen people talk about it on Twitter, that I guess on Derek's podcast, he takes a lot of time to just throw shots at Wes. Again, I don't know much about it or why that is, but I did see Wes comment on this, and I agreed with Wes's assessment of what happened. And he says, just watched a damn fine elimination, but in my obviously not humble opinion, Joss got the better of Derek. A mental lapse doesn't trump a physical dominance. And to be honest, that's kind of how I read it too. And this is not again, I saw what Wes wrote and I was like, yeah, I kind of watched it that way too. Like, Derek was just hanging on for dear life. And that's not a knock, because like, damn, he put up a hell of a fight. My beef was when everyone was on Twitter flooding with like, oh, this is one of the best eliminations ever, and like all that stuff. And I'm like, that can't be one of the best eliminations ever because of how it ended, right? Like, to me, that kind of ruined it. Like, it went on for so long, and I think there should be rule changes. Like, you shouldn't be able to like lock your shoulder in, not only because then it's impossible, but you could actually like hurt someone really badly. Right. But I just felt like, you know, after it went on for that long and then it ends because, you know, Joss makes a dumb mistake. Now, I'm not saying that it's not Joss's fault. Of course, it's all his fault. I'm just saying, when we're talking about the best eliminations of all time, you lose your status when that's how it ends. That's how I read it. That's my hot take on that.
But to me, the mental aspect is part of the game.
For sure.
And it would have been nice to see one of them try to sort of change up their strategy. Like, to me, you know, instead of going 11 rounds, around the like 5th round, you like try to throw a feint in some way. And like, if I'm Joss, I'd be like, okay, you're trying to tire me out. I'm gonna just, this round, I'm just gonna hold on for dear life and you get me out. Right?
For sure. And we don't know, like, again, it's edited, right? So we don't know like how it actually played out in like real life. But I feel like we've seen people do this challenge before, right? And
or variations, yeah.
Variations of it, yeah. And I feel like one of the key parts of it wasn't so much trying to just brute strength it, you know, and like just like ragdoll someone, as much as it was body control, change of direction, change of pace, you know what I mean? And like play that game to get people off balance. And once you get someone off balance, obviously their grip on the 8 would change, right? But Joss is just like pulling in the same direction over and over again, and Derek's just holding on for dear life in the same direction over and over again. And it kind of just kept repeating it. And I feel like the move, really, what you should have been trying to do was, again, change direction. Like, you're pulling towards one way and Derek's kind of, you know, being dragged in one direction. And now all that's going to happen, he's not going to let go. He's just hanging on for dear life. And now you guys are both just out of the ring. Whereas instead of when you get kind of close to the edge, if Josh just quickly switched directions, right, and went back to the middle where he's giving himself not only more room, but you know what I mean? Like, to me, like, it just wasn't, it just seemed like a lack of strategy on Josh's part, right? And I feel like, although it went 11 rounds, which is crazy, although it looked like he messed up his shoulder or his elbow or something, which is crazy.
He said that he injured his arm in some way. Yeah.
Like, it was a great battle, don't get me wrong, and it was a tough battle and a hard battle, and super, like, endurance was crazy for the both of them to keep going like that, like a crazy battle. I just can't put it in one of the best of all time, just because I just felt like it was bad strategy on Joss's point, and then the ultimate worst strategy of not even knowing the rules, or maybe it was a mental fatigue at that point, and that's what happened to him, right? Like, either way, crazy battle, just not one of the best eliminations of all time, to me, in my opinion. But again, let's hear what the people say. I want people to let us know what they think as well.
I agree. I would love to hear what people think about all of these competitions, because it was interesting. And then we basically, there was some chatter in the house where people are making deals. One thing we have to know. Sorry, got a little ahead of ourselves. The people who are eliminated, their money goes to the final pot. Because
Yes.
Shane had money and Joss had money. And Joss had the most money to that point.
He did.
In any event, so in the house, Kam, as the only survivor, has a grenade. And people are like approaching her to make sure she doesn't use the grenade on them. And by people, I mean Natalie and Cara Maria.
Yes. And Natalie... Sorry,
I did not like this move at all from Natalie. To me, Natalie is way too reactive. Like, she's still thinking in terms of the Big Brother house, where it's a smaller group of people, and, like, anyone could be nominated at any time. And I always feel like Natalie is still in that mindset where, like, as soon as someone gets a tool that could be some sort, like a grenade or is in the troika, she automatically reacts and is immediately on the person trying to, like, make a deal, barter. I don't think she was on Kam's radar at all until she did this.
You're totally right. And the other thing is, like, the grenade doesn't even really matter that much. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And especially in this instance where it was wear flippers, put lube on, or like an endurance thing. Like, to me, there's way bigger assets to have or like to not have access to than the grenade. So I found that kind of weird, but the one funny thing was just this whole setup. Like, the most interesting part to me was the Kam in the bath and like her crowning herself as Queen Kam. Was that it? Yeah. And I just think,
and
like,
her
that
royal
was funny.
court.
Yes, and if you address me in my bubble bath, you have to address me as Queen Kam, right? Which I thought was amazing. And it was funny because, yeah, as you said, Natalie's trying to make a deal with the Suicide Squad, and Marie's not buying it. What's Marie's line is something to the effect of, "Oh, that deal is as fake as Natalie's boobs."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you really buy the deal that Natalie's trying to sell? Probably not. But to me, there's so much more going on here that I think is being manipulated here. And I say that because Natalie should know that Kam having the grenade doesn't really shift the power that much at all. Right?
No.
Like, when Marie broke down for us last week just how the house was divided, basically the Suicide Squad, not that they're by themselves, but especially when it's heading into a women's elimination, I think they had the target on their back, right? Like, all the dudes were kind of going for them because none of the dudes, other than maybe Leroy, was really rocking with them, right? Like, Shane, especially the fact that Shane's gone too. Shane might have been with them, maybe, but Shane was gone. You know, Brad's kind of just on his own island, but Leroy, I guess. But other than that, like, they're not really aligned with any of the guys in the house, and then that kind of messes up the votes depending on, you know, whether it's a guy's challenge or a girl's challenge, right?
Yeah.
So I just found that super weird, like, in that sense. And more of the manipulation. So yeah, sorry, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but yeah, they're making this deal, trying to make the deal. Kam makes a deal with Natalie, which, I mean, she's sticking to her word because Natalie did do the same for her, right? When Natalie voted to put Alicia or Lisa, I forget what we settled on her name being. Alicia. Yeah. When Natalie decided to put Alicia in, you know, she didn't pick Kam, so Kam's kind of staying to her word. And we'll never even know if Natalie sticks to this deal or not, but it didn't really matter. And then Kara's trying to size up Kam. That's a conversation I found a lot more interesting because Kara's clearly sizing her up, which I found funny because Kara's still on this mentality that she's a vet and there's like all these rookies and the rookies should kind of bow down, which again works in most seasons of the challenge. But as we've talked about with Johnny Bananas multiple times, it doesn't work anymore because the numbers aren't in your favor. Do you know what I mean? So like she's sizing up Kam, and Kam's just kind of like, she's trying to figure out who she might use a grenade on. And Kara appears to be stunned that it could be her. And I didn't understand why she would be that stunned. Like, why should Kam be afraid of you? No?
Yeah.
Am I reading this wrong?
I agree that Cara Maria is relying too much on her reputation, where she's always, as you said, under the impression that she's a veteran, she shouldn't be nominated. But, I mean, Shane's is a veteran. He's one of the oldest veterans on the show. Veronica's a veteran. Like, there's lots of veterans that are going in. But
that's what I mean, right? Like normally that matters, right? Normally it matters because there's more vets in the house than there are rookies. So, you know, there's just a pecking order in that sense. But this time around, when you're adding in all these new shows, there's a lot more newer people in the house than there are the Cara Marias and Johnny Bananas and Veronicas. Do you know what I mean? So that whole, you know, oh, Kam, you shouldn't put me in just because I'm Cara Maria, and especially with Kam, who we just saw like doesn't really care about that shit. You know what I mean? Like it was just a weird gameplay. But I don't know. Do you have more on this? Because I kind of want to just jump ahead to what I really think the scam was.
Yeah, no, jump ahead.
So to me, this showed like the manipulation of what we're seeing, and I mean manipulation by the way that I feel that this is all edited and put together, right? So to me, what's really going on here, right? Like who was really running this whole operation was Zach and Tony. And I say this because I feel like it was, okay, so they were the Troika, so they got to pick the teams, right? And one of the things they didn't really do, and I feel like they didn't do this on purpose, but they didn't give them enough credit for how they picked the teams, which, pay attention again, right? Team 1 is Cara, Bananas, Natalie, and Nelson. Team 2 was Kayla, Nicole, Zach, and Tony. So just off those two teams alone, I'm looking at those two teams. I'm like, oh, those two teams are pretty strong. But there's also one person on each of those teams that if they lost, they wouldn't hesitate to throw that person in, being Nelson on Bananas' team, right? And then Kayla on Nicole and Zach's team, right?
Yep.
So then you look at the other two teams, and it's not even at all. So you're looking at Brad, who you know they want to throw in, but then those girls, as in Marie, Kam, and Jemmye. And on the other side, you have Leroy, Devin, Kyle, Brittany, and Kaylee. Right? So right there you can tell already. Cool. They showed the fact that they're masterminding it, but they didn't go overboard on it because the next level of the move, I thought, was people were definitely throwing this challenge. People were definitely falling on purpose. There was a scene where, if you watch carefully, Nicole, before she's about to go across, John, she's kind of looking over at someone and kind of motioning like, should I just fall? Should I just fall? Jemmye on Twitter, after we saw her like reaction of like, you know, the meme was going around of her just looking super scared standing up on one of the cars. She later said on Twitter that Zach, she only really jumped off because Zach told her to. Right? So to me, there's a whole other sub storyline that's really going on, and they're not really playing up the angle to give Zach and Tony credit for really pulling the strings multiple weeks in a row in this game. And even I think to another level, Bananas as well is behind this, right? I just think the way that things are going, it's just playing out way too perfectly, and the strings are being pulled, and they're not really editing it to show that fact. And I think it's because, It's because they didn't do it when Marie did the same thing.
And I did wonder about how poor Johnny Bananas did. Because Johnny Bananas is an athletic guy, and he's agile, and he did not do great in this competition. Although, in fairness, I think this was a super hard competition. Like, everyone seemed like it was... Well, I shouldn't say... I mean, we just finished accusing at least 4 people of throwing this competition. But it did seem like, even if you're trying your best, it'd be difficult. Like, Nelson and Zach were definitely trying their best, and like Zach almost took out a side of a car.
Oh, totally. And the other thing too to remember, right, is that so as this all breaks down, right, the troika ends up being Bananas, Nelson, and Natalie, right?
Yeah.
So they end up winning. The losing team ends up being Cam, Jemmye, Marie, and Brad. So they all have to pick one of the women to go into the elimination. And Brad says Marie, Marie says Jemmye, Jemmye says Marie, and then it comes down to Cam. And Cam says Marie as well, and Marie is not happy. So my question to you, John, is should Cam have said Marie's name?
I wrestled with this too, and I wondered about it, and I thought about it, and I think she had no choice.
See,
right?
I go the other way. No, but go on.
See, I think that what Cam said, where she was like, listen, if I vote for Jemmye, then it's a tie, and then it goes to the troika, and then my neck is on the line. I think her interpretation is correct, and I do think it's going to cause... I think that, you know, she could risk the fact that Marie would probably forgive her and know that was done reluctantly, rather than put her neck on the line.
True. Another interesting thing would have just been if she burned her vote and said herself. Right?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Just because that way you're not saying Marie's name, right? And Marie would still be going in because she still has 2 votes against her. But you didn't say her name to put her in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that would have been an interesting take. But at the same time, you're right, because it ends up being the exact same result in which, you know, Marie will get over it because you guys are friends, and she'll understand that at the end of the day, chances are she was probably going in. But the one big thing, again, which I wonder if it comes up in next week's episode, again, putting on the producer hat, we have to remember that Jemmye came on our podcast, Marie also came on our podcast, and got to emphasize this. They both explained how nobody knew, until we saw it on TV, nobody knew who actually wrote the note. So at this point in time, when we're watching them kind of go back and forth, they still think, like, Jemmye still thinks that Marie probably wrote the note, and she was trying to fuck with their whole room, right?
Sheldon,
Remember
you were
that.
brilliant. That hadn't even occurred to me as, like, playing into their hostility.
Right? So that definitely plays into it, because remember, they at this time still, Marie's super salty because she's like, I can't believe Jemmye thinks I wrote the note still. And then Jemmye's like, this bitch probably wrote the note. So even though they're friends, right, which kind of adds again to the mastermind of Johnny Bananas. And I know that I spent a lot of time on this podcast crushing Johnny Bananas. But the way that this has all been manipulated and the way that it's playing out is kind of perfect, right?
Yeah.
Because now you have these 2 girls who, like, how much easier do you think it would have been to be like, hey, Jemmye, just fall on purpose because we'll throw Marie in and get her out. Look, she's starting shit. She's writing shit in your room. And remember, Marie last week was saying how much she got bullied and how people were, like, tormenting her in the house because of the whole note shit, right? So Jemmye clearly thinks that it's her. Johnny Bananas and them obviously would take any advantage to play it up, the fact that they think it's Marie as well, right? Just to egg on the situation and split up the numbers. because if the girls had all those numbers together, if you have the 4 Suicide Squad girls, right? And I know Sylvia's gone, but if you had that, if they were smart enough to join up with, sorry, why am I drawing a blank here? Veronica, right? And Jemmye, that adds like 6 people right there. Like you have a 6-person voting block, right? In terms of if any of those people win and they get to pick teams, like that's a heavy crew that you can roll with. So Johnny Bananas, I mean, hey, I don't know. The way that it's playing out, it just shows me, on one level how great he is in terms of what they did here to like play up the whole node and divide the house and get people who should be working together to turn on each other. But my question is, why are they not playing this up on the show?
I don't know. There's been funny edits. And I agree with you. I think it's like, I understand why everyone in the house is so angry about those notes, but I think it was so smart of Johnny Bananas. First of all, to get his sister to write it. Like, it's an insane kind of pathetic move, but like, if you're going to do it, it's smart, right? Have an obviously different hand write it. And I love that he came up with a bunch of things he could say that would be applicable. Like, he didn't know coming in what the rooms were going to be. He didn't know, like, I guess he had figured out that Brittany was going to be there, but like, he just was so smart to have all these potential, like, these sort of generic statements that he could drop off.
Yeah.
That would be effective. And it's interesting that they didn't mention the notes at all. Right? Like, people...
They didn't mention it in the house. Yeah, it's super weird.
Yeah, they didn't mention it at all. Like, the notes were not mentioned in this episode. Full stop.
Oh, in the whole episode. Yes.
So to me, that's super interesting that they just, as a plot line, dropped it when it's still ongoing in the house. I mean, maybe they bring it up again, but so far they haven't.
I wonder if, like, okay, so he does this as one of his normal pranks, right? And they're filming it and they're like, okay, cool, and that's the end of it. But they didn't realize the real effect it would have in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what if that was the thing that happened? So initially, yeah, Jemmye and Veronica and Brittany are mad, and then, you know, they're trying to put it on Marie, but it doesn't actually play out in the house in terms of, you know, hey, who really wrote this note and why would you do this, and like have that whole breakdown to know that it would be that much of a storyline for the edit, right? Because now it's like, again, I just found it strangely put together that, you know, the game's just kind of going along, but it's clearly being manipulated by Zach, Tony, Johnny Bananas, clearly running this, right? And you can tell by the way that the Troika's making the teams each week, and strategically that one week they just left it out when Marie did it, which I still don't really understand. But if you're going to do it the other weeks where it's Zach and Tony, like, why wouldn't you show them actually coming up with the full plan when that's clearly the reason for their success so far? That's the thing that leaves me confused.
The thing that confuses me is, how does Johnny Bananas get away with just bullying his way into being the Troika? Like, I don't understand how every week... I understand how every week he's on the winning team, but I don't understand how people are just like, yeah, okay.
Because I think it's all part of the plan.
We've even seen people like Jemmye kind of make a screw face at it, and we've seen Maria be like, no, my ass is on the line.
Because I think that he has the numbers, and so no matter what, right? Again, remember, the genius of this all is that they split up the teams so that there's enough people within their quote-unquote alliance, but they put them with other people that aren't in their alliance. So in that instance, you only need, there's 4 of you, right? So how many people do you need to vote for you to be into the Troika, right? So again,
Yeah.
remember how they built the team. There's only one person that they don't really fuck with on each of their teams, right? So you can basically manipulate it however you want because you know that you're going to be a vote for yourself and Natalie's going to be a vote for yourself. Automatically, that's 2 votes you're getting in. Same thing if the other team won, and if it was Tony and Zach, they could do the exact same thing as well, right? Do you know what I mean? So the whole thing is rigged from the beginning that they can basically rig their teams to ensure that one of the two of them or one of the two sides of the crew wins, right? Either Zach and Tony are going to win or Bananas and Natalie are going to win, right? They can rig it that way. And then they know that, okay, we're just going to make sure that at least one of us are in charge of the Troika each week. Whether it's Tony or whether it's Johnny Bananas or whether it's Zach, one of us are going to be in control each and every week. And they've done it consistently. And again, I just want to know, like, I see it happening right now. And the only reason I can come up with for them not, explaining it all to us right now is because this is just the beginning of just a further domination. And it's going to get really boring soon because they're just going to run through the rest of the house.
Yeah, I already kind of feel like it's getting boring. Like, I'm enjoying this season, but what's really getting us from episode to episode is the competitions are exciting.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
The in-house political moves and it came hot out of the box in terms of, like, hooking up.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got our first hint that there might be something between Cam and Leroy this episode.
Yep.
But in terms of, like, the machinations, the political game, the social game, funny things, hasn't been super funny. I do want to point out one thing that's interesting to me is that, do you know who did pretty well at this? Devin. Who's not, like, traditionally a physical powerhouse. Actually, like, he didn't complete it, but he was one of the ones that went further.
Yeah.
I also, and like, can we talk about the preview a bit? About what's coming up next?
Yep.
Because shit is going to pop off between Johnny Bananas and Devin.
Yeah.
And that would be the second time. And, like, they really dislike each other. And when I say the second time, I mean the second time this season, they're going to go at each other. And I think that part of what's going on is that Devin sees how the pieces are fitting together and is trying desperately to stop it.
Yes.
But he doesn't have, like, his crew doesn't have the willpower to, like, buckle down. And I don't think that Johnny Bananas is good at strategy, but I think he'd be in trouble without Leroy and Zach, who are both good physically, but also really well liked. Like, at this point, no one speaks ill of Leroy or Zach, like, ever.
But I think they play 2 different games, right? I think that's the biggest key, because I think the biggest key here to what's actually going on as well is the fact that Zach and Tony are playing a low-key game, right? Mm-hmm. Bananas has to be in front of the cameras because he's also trying to play the I'm the star of the challenge show, right? So he has to be all in the camera and stirring the pot and doing all those things. Whereas Zach and Tony are totally fine to know that they're really pulling the strings, but they're not going to be bragging about it in the house. They're not going to be, do you know what I mean? Because when you really break it down and really look at it, right? If you look at one side of the house, and Marie broke this down for us last week, but it's only so much more apparent now, right? Where you see, okay, who's all going to vote together? You got on one side, you got Cara, you got Bananas, you got Natalie, right? Then you have Zach, then you have Tony. That's 5 people. Then you have Leroy, and then Kyle, right?
Yep.
Cara. That's 8 people right there. Leaving who's only on the other side. Chances are Nicole's going to go with them too, right? So that's up to 9. That only leaves, what? Brad, Marie, Cam, Jemmye, obviously, we got to remember, is on the other side, bringing that number to 10, because remember, Jemmye said that Zach told her to jump off.
Yeah.
Right? So now you're looking at Brad, Marie, Cam, Leroy's probably going to vote with the other side as well, right? He's going to vote with Johnny Bananas, so that's 11. So now you're only looking at on the other side possibly Kaylee, Brittany, Devin, Cam, Marie, and Brad. That's 6 people. That's not even close to enough numbers, right? So I think your theory is right. When you really look at it, Devin's looking at it all and saying, okay, I see what's going on here. And he's probably going to try to blow it up and tell Bananas, Tony and Zach are going to, like, just get you out, right? Like, they're not going to take you all the way to the finals. And he's right. And we're assuming that's what the conversation is. But, if that's what it is, he's totally right. Because you have to see how this is being played out, no?
Well, the other problem is that group of 6 that we're talking about that Devin could potentially rally, they are also still focused on Brad. Exactly. Brad's in their group, and they don't want to work with Brad.
Exactly. When they should be trying to work with Brad. Yes, you're totally right. If you're Marie, Cam, Kaylee, I don't know what side of the house she's on. She's doing a good job of floating, but she'd probably just go with the power of the house, right? Like, that's a tough one, but it doesn't look good if you really break down the numbers for the other side of the house. And it's all being dominated. Like, Nelson's kind of just a lame duck, right? Like, he's just kind of there. And it's just one of those things where, so Nelson, Kayla, Brad, like, this is what should happen, right? Nelson, Kayla, Brad, Marie, Cam, Leroy, although he won't do it, so we'll remove Leroy, but we'll say Devin and Brittany. That's 6 people. Kyle's going to float. Kaylee's going to float. They should be working together, but I don't think they see it enough yet.
No, I don't think so either. So I have to ask you, Sheldon, who killed it for you this week?
I'm going to say Zach killed it. And a lot of it I've just talked about now. Like, I think that he's really doing a good job of playing the long game in terms of, again, he's quiet and he's behind the scenes pulling the strings. But if you think about it, he hasn't been in danger or even close to danger at all so far this whole season. Even when he's not winning, his name's not in anyone's mouth. He's not causing any trouble. He's doing okay in challenges when he has to. And in this challenge, he was actually one of the rare people to make it all the way across. But unlike Nelson, he actually does have the power. You know what I mean? Like, even though Nelson's in the troika with Bananas and Natalie, Zach is still a major player in the game, but on the low. And I think, like, that's a big part of it too, because you take some heat off yourself by not winning every week. And for Zach running the house, I got to give him credit for that. He probably also had one of the lines of the entire episode where they talked about this car challenge, and he had the line where he said he's normally used to driving big SUVs, but him and Jenna did hook up in a small car once, so he should be pretty okay in the tight spaces. Normally, I'm not down with Zach's, like, demeaning of Jenna lines, but that was actually kind of funny. I did laugh. I laugh at that.
I loved at that line the reaction of Nicole and Kayla. Was in his group, who were both, like, immediately covered their faces and were so embarrassed. Nicole does not strike me as the kind of person who gets embarrassed easily, but there she was.
Yeah.
Super embarrassed. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I'm going with Zach just because I think he's killing it. He is dominating the house and playing a good game because he's doing it quietly. Like, him and Tony, I think, are running the house, but they're doing it really quietly. Nobody would think that. And the edit, at least the edit we're getting as well, doesn't really play into that fact, but they're really running the house right now.
Yeah. I'm a little mad at you, Sheldon, because I wanted to pick Zach. So
that's fine.
Thanks.
That's allowed.
I now regret asking you first what you thought. I agree with everything that you said, though. I think that Zach is playing a great political game, playing a great physical game, and if you think in terms of, let's say, somehow a troika gets formed that's in a position to take out Johnny Bananas and his crew, or do damage, because you can't take someone out in a single go-round, but do some damage, I think that Zach's not the first name you say. I don't think Zach's the second name you say. Exactly. I don't think Zach's the third name you say, right? Like, if you're gunning for Johnny Bananas, obviously he's your top choice. But failing that, you go for Natalie and then Leroy. So,
Leroy, even Cara, Tony. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of places you go before you even think of Zach. Zach's been so quiet.
And he's, at the same time, he's playing a good physical game, a good social game. You don't see him in the club when they have club scenes. We haven't had one of those for a couple weeks, but you don't see him, putting himself in vulnerable positions. He's playing a boring game from like a day-to-day, episode-to-episode thing, but he's also playing well. So this is, I think, the first time that Zach has earned MVP honors, and he's coming out the gate hot with a double MVP from us. But I think Zach is playing a perfect game this season.
Agreed. Totally agree. And I do think like the LVP needs to be the other people that aren't in that crew. Like, get it together. How do you not see what's going on right now in terms of the divide and conquer that's being done? And you know what I mean? Like, yeah, the biggest thing you pointed out was they're still the half of the house that doesn't realize that they need to be on the side of Brad, right? Like that Marie crew, Cam, Kayla, Nelson, like the fact that they don't realize that they need to join up with Brad instead of playing along and into the whole we need to get Brad out thing, right? Yeah. It's not a good look.
No, it's not a good look. They got to get their asses in motion. It looks
Also, hold on. I just thought of this. Do you think that, like we're crushing Natalie for her fake conversation with Cam, about the grenade and all that? Do you think that Johnny Bananas and her, like, part of the plan was, no, we're going to do this and I'm going to be like fake to them, but the reason why I'm going to do that is so that they think that I'm kind of worried and like play this whole thing up, when really we know that we have the numbers and I don't really need to do this, but it'll kind of like lower their guard a little and make them feel like they have a lot more power than they actually do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't know. I'd be interested to see that.
I do think Johnny Bananas is making strong suggestions to Natalie.
No, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of, like, maybe I explained that wrong, but I mean, like, in terms of whether whoever's idea it was, right? I just think that it's more of a plan where it's like, okay, so we're actually good right now in the house, but let's make them feel as if they're good. Like, we already know what our plan is, and we're going to pick them off one at a time, right? But let's make them feel a lot more comfortable, and they'll feel a lot more comfortable if I'm trying to, like, make deals with them, because it would make them think, like, oh, they're kind of scared with us. They're trying to trick us. Instead of, if you just didn't talk to them at all, then it's like, all right, well, fuck these girls. Yeah. Right? Like, it kind of puts them on, like, alert in terms of, oh, Natalie's trying to make deals with us. That must mean we're in some kind of power, when really they have no power.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it was a manipulation. I don't know. It was a weird conversation.
Yeah.
It was like a weird, strange conversation, but it seems like a lot of the conversations with Natalie in the house are weird and strange. So maybe that's just the vibe she puts out.
Maybe we'll find out. We'll get answers soon, because I feel like shit's about to go down next week. I think you're right. And, Marie kind of hinted at a blow up or something is coming up with her. Like, that's not going to go well for her. That's what she kept alluding to last week on the podcast when she was on with us. So, maybe there's a blow up, maybe there's a bad elimination. Who knows? We'll have to tune in next week to find out. But yeah, I'm still in, because I want to see mostly if my theory is correct here, if our theory that we just broke down is correct, just in terms of how these guys are just going to blow through, and like the producers are trying to like hide it from us, these guys are really blowing through and like dominating the whole thing. And that's why the edit seems kind of weird, because they're purposely like trying to not make it look like that, right? Because remember, the week that Marie would have won, that would have been with Tony and Zach as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was that eating challenge. So if they did show them completely masterminding that as well, how many weeks in a row was that of them being the masterminds? Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's several weeks.
And maybe that's why they didn't show that week of them plotting it all out and trying to get people out, because that would have been, 3 weeks in a row of showing a team purposely building their team strong and trying to get out the weaker players, like showing just like how little the challenges actually matter.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah, I'm still enjoying the season. I do think we're going to find that if the season is too long, like Dirty 30 was, that it's going to be off-putting. Like, I think they need to keep it tight. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I'm still enjoying it, but
for sure,
I think there's not a lot of material.
I agree too. There's not a lot of material. It's just like loser game theory gameplay that I'm doing right now to like keep myself interested. Like, I wonder if this is what's going on. That's all that's keeping me right now. But I think you're right.
Until next week, though. Oh, we skipped this. We should talk about Twitter. You can find me. You can find me on Twitter at @JChidleyHill.
And you can find me at Sheldon Alexander on Instagram and at Shell Alexander on Twitter.
And as usual, I'm going to give the warning that if you follow me on Twitter, at least for the next 6 days, there's going to be a lot of content about not just the Olympics, but how Canadians are doing at the Olympics. So just a heads up. Canada's crushing. Canada's doing well. But if you are not Canadian or don't care about the Olympics, it might interest you a little bit less.
I have not watched my amount of Olympics watched. Oh man, it's very unpatriotic of me, but to date, the amount of Olympics I've watched is I watched like the last end of curling when Homan lost to China, I think, which is just pathetic, first off. And I watched the shootout of the USA game last night. That's about it. That's all I've watched of the Olympics the entire time.
I can say with all honesty, I have watched approximately 65 hours of the Olympics.
I do not envy you at all. Oh, man. I do not envy you at all. But more power to you, John. Round of applause. Doing yeoman's work.
Thank you. Anyway, until next week, this was You Killed It.
And John, you killed it.
Thanks, buddy.